Man, it was a tough Sunday, a tough week. I've been listening to Browns podcast, Browns radio, watching the Browns game. Man, the fans, the media entities, there has been a lot of doom and gloom for watching two games. And I'm really feeling this is why people complain about Browns fans having a losing mentality. I think I heard a soundbite with Patrick Mahomes. I know in Kansas City they aren't reacting to what has happened to go 0-2 in Kansas City like they're reacting here in Cleveland, but that's nothing new to us. Eric, there has to be a negative. There's negative aura that we are generating from this losing mentality. It's we got to stop it.
Maybe not this podcast particularly, but yes. Yeah, I mean, history does not lead us to positivity the last 25 years or so. I mean, you look back in the recent history, it's well known that the Browns have lost their last 10 games dating back to last year and not eclipsing the 18-point mark scoring since the shootout in Denver last November with Jameis Winston as quarterback. So yeah, not a lot of positivity there. Kevin Stefanski has his proponent of going 1-0 each week, so I guess there's a chance that the Browns can go 1-0 this week and ignore what happened the first 2 weeks of the year. But this is going to be a tough hill to climb. We've seen losing streaks to start the season. We saw a losing streak for the entire season. We've seen losing streaks to end the season. So I'm hoping the number of veterans on this team can kind of put things together and make some plays and please, please, please win the turnover battle for once. That would really be great. And have some positivity in this contest. Um, the other thing is the Packers have had 2 home games this year, so hopefully getting to play an away game at the not so friendly confines of Huntington Bank Field will be a hostile environment. Unlikely, but hey, you never know. It's still September. People are still kind of showing up. Um, so it's a tough hill to climb, like I said. When you win several Super Bowls like the Chiefs, going 0-2 is not a big deal. But when you haven't won more than 2 playoff games in the same season since the 1980s, I believe, it's a little bit more challenging, but we're going to be positive, and they got a chance in this game, and hopefully, it's a start of positive mentality going forward for the Browns.
Drew, I think Miles Garrett said after the game, this shit is embarrassing. And
He did.
it might not be positive, but there's emotion there. It's moving away from the cathartic complaining to get into the positive. I could complain about what we saw with Baker and Nick Chubb but let's focus on, let's have some positivity. This season has just started, Drew. Talk me into we are going to win some games this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sing Fort Minor just yet, but I very much have that in the repertoire here, ready to go. But you try not to fall into the same old Browns mentality, right? It just to lose the way that they did, we are one loss away from getting ready for the Four Horsemen. So they hit the snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Check. They hit the things are going fairly well. One mistake and the entire game snowballs out of control. That was week 2. If history holds true, week 3 now becomes the get physically dominated and not be in the game at all. And that's enough for people to tune out. And once you do that, that's when, only then, is when the Cleveland Browns hit you with the surprise left hook victory out of nowhere when you've given up and you've lost hope and you've stopped paying attention. If they just lost, if it was just 2017 and they just lost every game, it wouldn't hurt at all, right? You'd just be like, oh, I lost again. Oh well. I feel like, this one we have one more really rough week ahead of us, and then they're going to hit you out of nowhere with that, hey, surprise, we can put it together and actually look like, a pretty good team. So I'm waiting for that one, but until we get there, the first quote that came to my mind when we were talking about this was the heel Vince McMahon quote to I forget what arena he was in, but it was "Life sucks, then you die." There's that was the first thing I thought of when I thought of, hey, let's not go down this path again. But this is the only road we've ever known, and so I'm hoping to not have the same old Browns mentality, but it is really hard to escape that when the team sure does everything they can to play like the same old Browns.
All right. Let's talk about what they must change this week to not be the same old Browns, what they must change against the Packers. Eric, let's go to you first here. What does change? What should Kevin Stefanski do differently? What should these Browns do differently to win this game against the Packers?
Yeah, I like their plan of attack more on offense in week 1 than week 2. Kind of getting back to that quick passing game. We saw the inability of Joe Flacco to be mobile, and I get it. You're north of 40. Yeah, it's a little bit harder than you were in your mid 20s. And the offensive line's also not getting any younger either to expect to protect for multiple seconds. So yeah, that would be my first start on offense, and then he's had one game, but we don't really have another outstanding running back. I would give Quinshon Judkins the lion's share of carries this week. And hopefully he did have the highest yards per carry average on the team as a running back. We have at other positions carry the ball, but nonetheless, as a running back, he was the guy who was most productive. So I'd rather see what he's got. I mean, you invested a second round pick in him. Hopefully, he's going to play the remaining 15 games. So that would be my, kind of, he'd be my primary weapon, and hopefully we can get that play action game going. Defensively, I kind of reiterated it earlier in the segment. We've got to force turnovers. We've heard all offseason how they're going to be working on getting turnovers because they were so poor in that category last year. Haven't really seen that develop this year. They have to force turnovers. I don't care which way it happens, but the Browns defense has to give the ball to the offense, with a short field, because that's going to be the easiest way to score points, especially against this great defense. I understand the defense is tired. I understand the offense is putting them on the field a lot longer than they'd like to, but if we can get, a stop, a turnover, multiple turnovers, that's one thing. Then that could really swing things in this contest. And last but not least is probably taking a look at, Jordan Love's had a good year so far, but Jaden Reed, had that big injury last week, and all of their receivers are kind of going up a spot. So hopefully Greg Newsome and the rest of the cornerbacks rooms can kind of, do their work. I'm guessing a Matthew Golden will be coming in, a one-on-one matchup against him. It's still going to be a mighty challenge, but they're not going to have all their weapons on offense. So, try to take advantage of what opportunities present themselves, because the Ravens didn't have anybody on the injury report prior to our game. So, mistake-free football, and about everything else, including what I said, needs to go right for the Browns on Sunday.
So
Drew, what must change?
the play of the offensive tackles and not being the worst special teams unit in professional football. I'd start there. The offensive tackles they're not where they need to be. The ones that can play can't stay healthy, and the ones that do play shouldn't. And that is just a really bad recipe when the offensive game plan calls for and almost necessitates by schematic, play design, downfield play action, bootleg passing. You don't have a quarterback that can run a bootleg very well, and you don't have an offensive line that can hold up, and so that those offensive tackles have to be significantly better. I don't know where you're going to get that from, but that's where I would start. Doing something schematically to double team Micah Parsons would be helpful. And Eric talked a little bit about the turnovers. If you count the punt block, there's something like -4 through 2 games with 0 turnovers caused. They did cause that fumble on Derrick Henry, but they couldn't recover it. It's This team needs to play a certain brand of football. They need to be able to get off the field and force turnovers on defense. They've done one of those two things really well, and they need to avoid colossal back-breaking mistakes on offense, and they just can't get out of their own way. So that's what I would look for. And then the last thing I'll mention is that against the Ravens, they averaged less than 4.5 yards per passing attempt. That's really bad. It has to be better, whether it's more efficient, whether it's fewer attempts for the same amount of yards, whether they can get more yards. I don't know, but it can't be 45 pass attempts for less than 200 yards again. It just can't be for this team to be successful.
I would love seeing on the stat line, Quinshon, 60 yards, got a big chunk of them in that highlight we just saw. I think once again, we'll say Quinshon is going to be a big part of this. Dylan Sampson catching balls out of the backfield. That's great. Quinshon's going to be the workhorse for this team. That's what I'm looking at. Yeah, we'd love to see Denzel, get a pick, see someone in the secondary get a pick. So I'm on the same page with you guys.